This podcast contains our own personal views not associated with any organisation. Coronial contains descriptions of death inquests that may be graphic and disturbing to some listeners. Discretion is advised. Hi everyone, and welcome back to today's episode of Coronial. My name's Emma.
I'm Georgie.
And I'm Alice.
And in today's episode, we're going to be discussing the coroner's inquest into the death of G.H. Now, G.H. is the redacted name used in the coroner's inquest.
Mm-hmm.
And G.H.'s death occurred on the 26th of April 2017. Before we get stuck into this one, a quick warning that this inquest does relate to a person who suicided, so potentially not suitable for everyone. And this inquest also does touch on themes of domestic violence as well. So also, if that's not something for you, feel free to listen to the next episode. So GH had immigrated to Sydney from the Middle East in 2009. At the time of his death, he was on a permanent protection visa. He had undertaken study at the University of New South Wales and was undertaking a diploma at TAFE at the time of his death. GH had no family living in Australia with him, but he did have a few close friends. He had a history of suicidal ideations dating way back into his childhood. We actually don't know how old GH was, but was evidently an adult. And yeah, he had a history of depression and suicidal ideations, and one of his close friends, Mr. H, was well aware of this background.
And so, sorry, what is a permanent protection visa?
I believe it's some sort of visa that's given to people who will be in significant harm if they return to their country.
Oh, okay.
So rewinding back 2 years from the time of GH's death to April 2015, Mr. H had visited GH at his home and he'd seen a flyer for an indoor shooting centre at his home. Mr. H was concerned seeing this flyer and emailed the particular shooting range in April of 2015, identifying GH and asking that he not be allowed to access firearms at the shooting range as he suffered from depression and suicidal ideation.
Is that something that shooting range is actually going to be able to action, though? I understand there's really good intent behind that.
That's the whole
okay.
quest.
Perfect, because I'm like, yeah, autonomy.
Yep.
The answer is you shouldn't allow people to access weapons when they're suicidal.
Yeah, but you're saying like anyone who's ever had any level of suicidal ideation can't be permitted anywhere near a firearm. Like,
yeah, that seems a bit
that's
protectionist,
a bit extreme. So
yeah.
like it's hard to know like what evidence does that, let's say, gun range have to deny someone
well
access?
there are obviously a set of rules which will
we'll
go through.
Yeah.
But in circumstances where you say, like, this person had suicidal ideations, like, 20 years ago and doesn't currently and hasn't for the last 20 years.
Then fine. Yeah.
Well, I don't know
what
the
are you
answer
to do?
to that question because that's not pertinent here. That we know that this person had suicidal ideations at
actively.
the time.
Okay.
Yes,
okay.
Correct. And that is why his friend contacted the shooting range because he was concerned about the safety of his friend.
Yeah.
When Mr. H contacted the shooting range via email, in this email he also asked that, if possible, that the shooting range notify other shooting ranges in Sydney. So the following day, the indoor shooting range emailed Mr. H back, acknowledging the email and advising that it had been forwarded to the range supervisor and to the Shooting Association in Sydney for circulation around other member ranges in Sydney. The email back to Mr. H also asked whether GH had a valid firearms licence.
Yep.
Mr. H responded the same day, noting that GH did not have a valid firearms licence but was trying to acquire one.
Okay.
So GH did not have a firearms licence, but under Section 6B(1)(a) of the Firearms Act, an unlicensed person is permitted to use a firearm at an approved shooting range under the supervision of an authorised licensed holder.
Yeah.
So you don't even need to have any sort of permit or anything in order to go to a shooting range as an unlicensed person. You just have to fill out a set of forms, which we'll go into in a moment. So the indoor shooting centre was an approved range for the purposes of Section 6B, and as such, it offered come and try shooting lessons to unlicensed persons.
I've never in my life thought that a come and try shooting session was something that would appeal to people.
Well, if you want to get into it, you want to try it before you get into it as a hobby.
I forget that it's a sport.
And pay all the money. Yeah.
Sorry,
it's not just for recreation.
And also, like, some people just will never have a reason to hold a gun and like, well,
I mean, that's exactly why I went to one.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're like, I just want to try it out once in my life and that's it. So when an unlicensed user applies to use a firearm at a shooting club, they are required to fill out what's called a P650 form. This form is also required for people applying for a firearms license, so it's the same form. This form asks a number of questions about a person's criminal history and background, and any person who answers yes to one of the prescribed questions in the P650 form will be prohibited from using or possessing a firearm. So both at, if you're going for a try shooting lesson, but also if you're applying for a firearms license. If you answer yes to one of those questions, you'll be denied.
But there's also, if you're just going for the come and try session, there's also nothing stopping you from lying on that form and then finding out. Because if you're actually getting a gun license, they obviously then do the checks.
I would hope.
Yeah, because it's done slightly differently, and this is what they didn't explain well in this inquest, is that when you're applying for a firearms license, that's all regulated by the Firearms Registry, at least in New South Wales, which is the jurisdiction where this inquest took place. But I'm assuming it would be similar in other states as well. But for an unlicensed application to just go try at a shooting range, none of that is overseen by the Firearms Registry. They use the same form, but there's no connection or talking between the Firearms Registry and this application. So theoretically, a person could have tried to apply for a firearms license,
been denied,
and then go to a come and try shooting lesson or session and be approved if they incorrectly filled out that form, because there's no.
But in the case of going to a come and try, you're not taking the gun home with you.
No. So at the time of GH's death, the P650 form included questions about mental health, but did not specifically ask for questions around self-harm.
Right.
So it's like,
have you ever had any mental health issues, rather than have you ever tried to hurt yourself?
Which is really tricky, because you answer yes to that, you're suddenly denied, you can't do anything, but they could have no bearing on your state of mind currently.
But I also think
or even
hurt yourself or others is also important.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But also you could have mental health issues and not have suicidal ideations.
Absolutely.
And so that shouldn't deny your right either. Yeah.
Exactly. So they're very separate things.
Yeah.
Yes, and that's very discriminatory to ask that question.
But I also think that we often tread too lightly when discussing mental health in these circumstances where you just need to ask the direct, relevant question, because my anxiety isn't relevant to whether I can hold a gun or not.
Yep.
It's the specific point of, are you going to hurt someone or yourself that needs to be asked.
Correct. And that was
rest of the mental health questions are irrelevant.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or your OCD or whatever other thing that is entirely irrelevant. Your mental health plays no part other than whether you harm yourself or others.
Mm. Yeah. And those direct questions, that direct question
is what's needed
in this questionnaire at this point in time of GH's death.
Yeah.
So records show that GH was permitted to participate in a try shooting lesson held at the centre on the 24th of May 2015. So this was about a month after Mr. H had contacted the centre.
Okay.
And it was the same one that
it was the same
contacted.
shooting range.
Okay.
So Mr. H had contacted them a month before saying, hey,
don't let them there.
This specific person, don't let him come to your shooting range. I'm concerned he's depressed. And then literally a month later,
I would be interested as to how many people they have on these lists. Are these one or two people, or are there a lot of people on a list?
Well, he wasn't even on a list, obviously.
Yeah,
because
true. Or was he just missed off of the list? Like, I guess
potentially,
you know, like if this is a really long list,
they just omitted him when they were doing their checks.
Yeah.
So again, on the 26th of April 2017, so a whole 2 years later, GH attended the range again for a come and try session. For this session, he filled out a P650 form, which asked the prescribed questions. He was then permitted to participate in the try shooting session. So assuming that he didn't answer yes to any of the questions and therefore was...
And I think that's hard
permitted.
2 years later for him to necessarily still be on the list, because that also, again, it's hard to define whether things have changed in that 2 year period.
Yeah. So while being closely supervised by the firearms instructor, GH was handed a pistol, which was not tethered or secured. He turned the pistol on himself and fired.
Oh.
No one else was harmed, and emergency services were called, but GH was pronounced dead on the scene.
Can we call that slightly differently? No one else was physically harmed.
Yeah.
Because I don't think no one else was
traumatic.
harmed. Yeah, that's that poor employee.
And even just everyone else who was there at the time.
True, it was a come and try
there.
session, right? There were multiple people.
I don't know if it works as like a group session or if you can just come in at any time.
Yeah, right.
But there was at least one other person there who saw that person.
Yes.
Right in front of them.
Yeah,
They would have had
supervision.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely terrible. And the sad thing about this inquest is, and we'll get into it in a little bit, but it's not by no means the first inquest of this type. And actually this one was held in parallel with another inquest of a very similar nature.
What?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I'm probably not on the media very much because they're probably like suppression orders and things like that where it's not discussed because you don't want to necessarily give people ideas.
But if you think about it, if you're wanting to get an access to firearms,
that's the easiest way.
The easiest, quickest way.
Yeah.
To do it. So the post-mortem toxicology showed no presence of alcohol or drugs in GH's system at the time of his death.
But we don't really know anything about GH at this point. Like there's no detail into the background of their life other than they're on a visa.
They're on a protection visa and they've had a history of severe...
Society,
Yeah.
But we don't know enough about like the rest of their lifestyle.
No. Except that he was a fairly solitary person.
Yeah.
So what systems were in place at the shooting range to prevent self-harm at the time of GH's death? The owner of the range gave evidence during the inquest and admitted that they'd received the email from Mr. H and then subsequently had permitted GH to participate in a come and try shooting lesson the month after.
Yeah, that one's particularly damning.
Yeah, and like there was nothing to say that, well, who knows what happened in that particular session, whether GH was
totally fine or whatever.
Yeah, or whether they were planning to and then decided
against it.
Yeah. Or there were, I don't know, too many other people around. But
did they have much of a reasoning behind why they permitted, why he was not stopped that first time?
The owner just said it was an oversight.
Yeah. Okay,
So it was a mistake.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and has completely admitted that.
Yeah.
So in terms of the 2017 participation, so the 2 years later, the owner expressed the view that it was not the role of the shooting centre to question or judge the suitability of a person to participate if the customer had completed the P650 form appropriately and the instructor had no concerns. So they're basically saying what you're saying, like things could have changed.
In that 2 years.
In the 2 years. And
was the oversight that initially occurred ever actually noticed in 2015?
No.
Yeah. Okay. So they couldn't have made any action as a result of that because they didn't know they'd done it in the first place.
Correct.
Yeah, cool. Okay.
No.
So it only came about because of the inquest, presumably, or the death. That they were like, oh, this guy was not meant to be here.
Yeah, correct. And the friend would have said, hey, I emailed them about this 2 years ago.
But I think that's then hard for the owner to say, oh, it's not within our right to prevent him from coming in, when it's like, well, you didn't know you did wrong the first time.
No, but I think the point is that
2 years later.
It wasn't their call to deny them entry. Yeah. Even if they had denied them entry 2 years previously.
And again, it's like, what's that time period that like lapses where you're sort of like, okay, and I don't know the answer to this question, and I'm sure it's probably in the regulations of like.
Even then, it's hard to put a time point on
really
anything.
Is on mental
unless
illness.
It's never. Or like unless it's enduring. You know what I mean? Like, because 6 months, 5 years, or just forever. forever is the safest.
It's the safest, but it's also what Georgie said at the very start. Like, how do you prohibit people from accessing things when they haven't had those issues for 20 years?
Yep.
And now all of a sudden you're saying, no, you can't do it.
Yeah.
Even though you're perfectly fine.
It's the concept of insurances as well, right? Just because you had one thing diagnosed one time in your life when you were 12 years old, and then that's permanently there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or even misdiagnosed as well. What if someone's accidentally written that you were suicidal on a medical record that one time, and then you're never allowed to do an activity that you want to do?
Yeah, or someone is doing it for reasons that aren't your safety. Like,
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, someone is trying to mess with you, essentially, trying to control your life.
Yeah.
By
so
saying, no, you want to do this? I don't want you to.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to falsely report
that you were suicidal.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not relevant to this inquest because this person, well, it did say that he tried to apply for a firearms license, but it didn't go any further into that, whether he was denied or whether he ended up putting an application in or whatever. But I'm assuming through that vetting process, they then do get access to medical records. I'm not sure. As in, like, the firearms registry gets access to medical records. But
it'd probably be only of the state that you are applying for the firearms license because we don't have a national medicalized system. And I even then don't know how that record would be, because it's all privately held by each private institution.
Yep.
So the firearms registry is run by the police, at least in New South Wales. So it's like a police force. But yes, I know it's not still.
Police don't hold hospital records though.
No.
They have as much as would be relevant to, like, when you get a criminal history check, which wouldn't involve any of your health records
history.
Unless your criminal history is related to your mental health, such as things where there's medical information related
to a criminal charge. Yeah. So yeah, I don't know the answer to those questions, but it's an interesting one, and it just reminds me of the whole issue that they have in the US of the rights to bear arms, and like they basically, I understand in some US states they barely even have background checks.
Yeah,
because it's a right,
and you can walk in and get it. Like, they don't even have
same day.
Wait.
There's no
times,
waiting periods.
I think we do have wait periods in Australia, right?
I'm pretty sure.
Yes.
Yeah, to get through all this paperwork.
I think there's a wait period.
I think there would be a wait period, but it's just
But not a wait period if you would like to just go to a shooting range.
But no, there's no wait period. Obviously, you just need to fill out the form, and it needs to be done in a way that satisfies the club.
I feel like there should be you have to book in advance.
Yeah, so they can actually have time to check their systems.
But also so the person isn't making an impulsive decision.
Yeah.
Like, we will only accept you at a minimum 48 hours in advance booking. Yeah.
And I don't know what the case is or was for GH, whether he had booked it in advance or he just went on the day. It doesn't go into any of that. So the owner had noted that there were systems in place to flag persons who had previously been identified as not suitable to participate in tri-shooting lessons. So this included the maintenance of a list of persons who had been previously deemed as unsuitable, and that list was held at the front counter. The owner was unable to say whether GH's name had been added to the list following the email. So obviously they didn't preserve the list in the
system either, right?
Well, was it even a system? Was it just like a book that they wrote the name down?
Yeah, and so I should say that this death occurred in 2017, but the inquest didn't occur until 2022.
Yeah.
So there's also a time lapse.
I was going to ask, did it talk about their ID checks? Do you have to prove who you are when you go in?
Yes, I believe you need to give some form of ID.
Okay, cool. So
you're right. You can't give a false
identity because then, it reminds me of the Northern Territory Alice Springs flight adventure of the guy that kept giving the false name.
Yeah.
And I was like, do you even have to say who you are?
Yeah, yes,
but
you do.
I believe you do.
It wasn't an issue here.
Yeah. Okay.
But they did say that he'd given his license, his driver's license, and it was all verified. So there was no concerns in terms of his identity.
Yeah, cool.
So the owner also explained that the details of each person who had ever participated in a tri-shooting lesson were entered into a database. She said that GH's details would have been included in that database. However, the database is not routinely cross-checked against the list at the front counter. So the database was not a system which would allow for GH's suicidal intent to have been identified at the time he entered the centre in 2017. So it would have basically said that he's participated in a session in 2015 and he was able to do that, but it would have been cross-checked with the list at the front counter if his name was actually on that list.
Well, which obviously, because you don't want to cross-check and then find out that someone's actually participated. You're like, nope, I just don't want to know that info.
But also that makes it sound even more like the database was set up for the people who were using the service and I guess being charged a fee. Yeah. But the list of people they weren't going to allow in was probably a handwritten list or a typed out list. It wasn't loaded into the database.
Yeah, but did the database have on there, like, so if someone had attended and they're like, this person shouldn't come back, like warnings and flash of like, do not attend again?
No.
Yeah, right. See, that's what I would want on a gun range.
That was only in the list. So evidently there might have been a process where if they had been excluded from participating for whatever reason, they'd write it down on the list and not enter it into the database.
System.
Yeah. Because probably the system didn't have that capability.
It should, though.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Like, I'm like, yeah.
And there were also no systems in place that allowed shooting ranges to share intelligence.
Yeah.
Either.
Because they're all private companies.
Correct. And also no ability for them to share intelligence with the registry.
Yeah. Did they breach technically privacy regulation by notifying the state-based...
I don't know. It didn't go into that, but potentially.
Yeah.
But no, maybe not because the friend had specifically asked them to do so. But again, the friend's kind of breached privacy.
Yes. Yeah.
But the friend's not a health professional breaching or like...
Well, neither is the shooting range.
Yeah. So maybe it's fine in that instance because it's kind of a grey area. But if GH had come and disclosed it, then they wouldn't be allowed to disclose it unless they have a waiver on their piece of paper for like whatever you provide to us is...
Correct.
Available to be provided to everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah,
right. Yeah, it depends on the paperwork you sign.
Yeah.
Yes. Which I think that would open a whole can of worms if you put that sort of waiver.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that so many people would be details
like, so many people would be like, no.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. And yeah, there's also no way, as I said, for the shooting ranges to then share any intelligence with the firearm registry in the instance that they've denied access to a weapon.
Wait, hang on. So you could come to a shooting range and be denied access, but then you could just go buy a gun anyway. Yeah, that's unhelpful.
Yeah. But again, it's the same confidentiality.
Yeah, fair. Okay,
issues.
fine.
But
I love privacy laws.
It's so concerning when it comes to a weapon.
Yes. Yeah. Totally agree.
And I understand the Privacy Act and the need for privacy and all those sorts of things. And this is very confidential, sensitive information that they're acquiring from people. But also that's the price you pay for wanting to access a weapon.
And I think public safety still
outweighs,
in this instance, has the potential to outweigh. And so therefore there is an argument for breaching people's privacy in the context of public safety.
Mm-hmm.
But then, still a fine line.
It's fine line, and evidently, like, the system, not in this context, in like suicide context, it hasn't really worked because, as I said, this is not the only case where this has happened. But like since the whole Port Arthur gun buyback scheme in 1996, the reported gun deaths have drastically reduced in Australia. So it shows that the system is working to an extent. It's not perfect.
True.
Yep.
But it is better than what it was.
Yeah.
Back, 30 years ago.
Fair.
Yeah, and no system's ever perfect, right? I think we've found that throughout all the episodes that we've done. But it's very hard to introduce a completely flawless system for most things. So immediately following GH's death, the Firearms Registry, which I've already explained is the main body in New South Wales responsible for firearms licensing and regulation, they temporarily suspended the approval of the indoor shooting centre to permit unlicensed persons to handle firearms at the shooting range until after they completed a review of the shooting range.
That seems fair, I guess.
Yeah. Hard for the shooting range, though. It's obviously an impact to their business.
Yeah, to their business, but I guess you're running a high-risk activity, so I think you kind of have to accept there's the risk that could happen at some point in your operating.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So after the review, so it sounds like the review all went okay. Again, it didn't go into this at all.
Well enough, yeah.
Went well enough. The registry imposed a condition on the centre prohibiting the unlicensed use of firearms on the range unless the pistol was tethered in such a manner that prevented it from being turned in any direction other than the direction of the target.
Okay.
So you basically just have it like mounted onto something?
I think so.
And it can only be
Or the tether
direct.
is so short.
No, I think it's mounted because it then goes on to say that this condition was complied with by the shooting range and that the tethering system that they use, which is actually one that I think they might have designed themselves, was effective in preventing a person from getting in front of the tethered firearm and turning it around. So I'm assuming it's like mounted.
And then it's probably just enough that you can like lift it to
Up
do
and
your
down,
own,
sort of
do
side
your
to
own
side.
like, yeah.
Physically.
Yeah, but you can't actually turn it around.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Interesting. But I mean, that's great.
Yeah.
I mean, it's great. I think it might impact the user experience
Probably.
slightly, but again,
But you're also going there as an unlicensed
person.
yeah. And if you really wanted to get the full experience, you try that, you think, okay, I want to try this more, you go and get the license.
And I actually understand, and this could be incorrect because, as I said, Coroner didn't do an amazing job of explaining this, but I believe you can, as an unlicensed person, become a member of a shooting club by doing like training through and vetting through the shooting club. Again, it's not through the firearms registry. And with that, they've talked about further on in the inquest permitting those people to handle firearms untethered.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So they're still unlicensed.
Yep.
But they've been there enough. Like,
and they're a member of the shooting club that they're
and presumably
allowed to.
that would be safer, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But
I mean,
also,
there's
but then
really
you
no
wonder
difference.
why if they never applied to have a firearms license.
It may be, again, because they don't actually need a firearms license outside of the shooting club.
And they may have no desire to
get one.
To own their own firearm.
Yeah.
Or house their own firearm.
etc.
Yeah, they like going to the shoot. Like it's a
hobby.
To be fair, like I also feel hyper aware of that even when I see guns out in public, and when I say that, I mean when I see them
like on police
officers.
Yeah.
Like you always just feel like hyper aware that it's there.
Yeah.
Even though you know that they're obviously police officers and
And I think that
everything's
just
above board.
comes down to the fact that for us it's not normalized at all.
Correct.
Like for us it is not normal to see a gun in everyday life, whereas somewhere in like America it would be so normalized.
Yeah.
You'd be like, oh yeah, that person's got a gun.
Which is terrifying.
Yeah.
Because people are people.
Yes.
The concept that it's normalized that it's okay to hold a weapon for your defense.
Yeah.
It's a societal norm that's different to Australia.
Yes. So was GH's death preventable was obviously the first thing that the coroner looked at, as they always do. The coroner considered whether GH's death was preventable having regard to the apparent failure of the shooting club when processing GH's P650 application, including the failure to act on Mr. H's email in 2015. And secondly, the inability of the shooting club to check the veracity of the information regarding mental health history as reported by applicants in the P650 forms.
How are you going to check that?
Exactly.
Good luck.
Yeah. You can't stop people from lying on their forms.
Nope. And even if they did tell the truth, well, I suppose it's an automatic blanket no.
Yeah. And people know that.
But,
so why would they even
would
bother?
you? Yeah.
In relation to the failure to act on Mr. H's warning, the coroner noted that the processes in place at the shooting club did not alert of a safety concern regarding GH despite the email from Mr. H, and therefore there was a failure in the system that was used by the shooting club because evidently for that 2015 attendance, it should have been flagged. There was also no evidence to suggest that the firearms registry was ever informed of this email, and it's likely that it was not. And there was no indication that staff members at the shooting club knew to contact the registry. And they didn't actually go into whether it was a requirement that
should be the
that
case.
Gets reported up to the registry.
That's concerning.
So obviously if staff members don't know what to do with the information, they're not going to go to that step of reporting it up to the registry.
Yeah.
In terms of the P650 forms, there was a discussion about whether the firearms registry should share information with the shooting club's about individuals, which we've already touched on. A detective responsible for investigating this case gave evidence regarding the difficulties with the registry sharing this information, as obviously this information is sensitive in nature and therefore should not be distributed beyond the New South Wales police force. And the coroner also agreed that it's not appropriate.
That's a tough one, because does it need to be sensitive information, or can you just be like, this person is not permitted the end?
I guess that in and of itself is sensitive,
because you know that there's a reason behind that.
Yeah, okay. I don't have a good answer. I'm just like...
No, but then I'm just thinking from the view of, I go up to a shooting club, I put in my form, they're like, nah, even though I've answered everything correctly on the form.
Yeah, it's probably just going to create some sort of
And then they're
fight.
like, nah, sorry, you've been flagged.
And you just be like, I don't know why.
Yeah. I don't know why. And
please give me an argument. Yeah.
Yeah, it just caused a bit of a kerfuffle. And then you'd probably go to the next shooting range and they'd do the same thing, because they'd have the same system, hopefully, in place.
Yeah.
The coroner did comment that it would be desirable to have some sort of alert system linking intelligence received by shooting clubs with oversight of the P650 forms by the Firearms Registry. So the coroner said it would be helpful for clubs to be able to report up to the Firearms Registry, but understand that it's probably not feasible for the Firearms Registry to report to the clubs.
Yeah, I gotcha.
Okay.
Which makes
fair.
sense.
Yeah.
And I mean, of what you want, because in theory, the firearms club is the more controlled environment versus the registry. You could get a firearm without.
But then there's also the issue of, like, someone could go to a firearms club and get rejected. And yes, it gets reported up to the registry. Yeah. All good. But then the registry then can't report it to other shooting clubs. So this person theoretically could just go to the next shooting club.
Yeah, true.
And then answer the forms in a different way.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they've learned from that first experience.
Exactly. And there's no way for that information to then be shared with the other shooting clubs.
Yeah.
So, yeah, in terms of the linking intelligence received by shooting clubs with oversight of the P650 forms by the Firearms Registry, there was mixed support for this from the stakeholders that gave submissions to the inquest. So the Shooting Association was in support of it, saying an alert system would be of great assistance where intelligence received from shooting clubs could be disseminated in a timely fashion. So they're obviously saying it'd be disseminated in some way, but they didn't go into that.
Helpful.
But the police commissioner did not support such a recommendation, saying that the deficiency in this case was the specific club's failure to act upon the information provided by Mr. H. The implementation of an alert system would not have addressed this failure in this circumstance, which I'm like, yeah, it may not have, but like overall.
Is that a bad thing to have?
Exactly. And also, if there was some sort of an alert system in place, it would have, at least the staff member who received Mr. H's email would have known that I have to input that information into this alert system instead of being like, I don't know what to do with this information.
Yeah.
So at least it would have given that sort of prompt to actually do something with the information, because ultimately they got this email and never did anything really with it. I mean, they apparently sent a warning to the Shooting Association, but it just went nowhere.
Yeah, it did nothing.
His name didn't get on the list.
Yeah.
So the coroner noted that while an alert system would not have addressed the deficiencies at club level, if there was a simple online reporting portal created where a club could lodge instant notifications or alerts, this may assist with better reporting of these issues, which is basically what I just said. So the coroner suggested that such a portal would be simple and would advise the Firearms Registry where someone such as GH was refused permission to use a firearm. This in conjunction with another recommendation that came out of another New South Wales coroner's inquest known as the Edwards Inquest, relating to registry oversight of access to firearms at shooting clubs for unlicensed shooters. Remember, at this point in time, there's no regulation of unlicensed shooters by the Firearms Registry. This other inquest had recommended
that there should be.
There should be some sort of oversight.
Yeah.
This would have assisted with reducing the risk of harm associated with unlicensed access and use of firearms. Just for background, the Edwards inquest was held about 12 months before the inquest into the death of GH, and it's a bit sensitive, but it related to the murder of 2 children by their father after their father had legally obtained a firearms license even though he was severely depressed and had a known history of domestic violence. This particular inquest, the Edwards inquest, was lengthy and contains a number of recommendations which were referred to throughout the inquest of GH, including recommendation 20, which is this Firearms Registry oversight of access to firearms by unlicensed shooters at shooting clubs.
Was that in New South Wales as well, or was it? Yeah, okay.
Yeah. The coroner did talk about the interplay of disclosure obligations for shooting clubs and confidentiality, and whether that would be compromised by an alert system. I think we've already talked about this. But there are obviously legal obligations of shooting clubs to report certain information to the police. But going through the relevant legislation, it appears that those reporting and confidentiality obligations only relate to club membership applications and applications made by club members, and not to applications made by unlicensed persons.
Right.
So therefore it appears that the disclosure and confidentiality does not extend to unlicensed users, so should not impact on an alert system that relates to unlicensed users only. But then you sort of think, why would you just have an alert system that only relates to unlicensed users?
Yeah.
Like, you'd want everyone to just be in the system, like, because there could be a licensed person who
should have their license revoked.
Yeah, exactly. And that should also be in the alert system too.
One would hope so, because, you know, you could just walk around with your, in theory, in-date license without it being obvious that it's been revoked.
Yeah.
I don't know how the system works,
I don't know how.
Is it like a driver's license?
Renewed?
Yeah. Well,
I'm assuming.
Does it have a date on it, and then it's like they just look at it versus if it's been revoked? Like, you know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Anyway. Don't know how firearms licenses work. But also for reference, these particular disclosure obligations that I just talked about are provided under clauses 101 and 104 of the firearms regulation. Just saying that because I'll reference that later.
Okay.
In relation to the recommendations. So registry oversight of P650 forms. As suggested in reference to the Edwards inquest, another issue for consideration in this inquest was whether it's feasible or desirable for the registry to have oversight of the P650 forms completed by unlicensed persons who engage in try-shooting lessons. There was extensive discussion of the P650 forms in the Edwards inquest, and the coroner in that inquest ultimately recommended that the New South Wales government revoke the use of P650 forms to allow an unlicensed person to undergo firearms training without the involvement or vetting of the firearms registry, with the view of implementing an alternative scheme which provides for adequate verification of information and oversights by the firearms registry for unlicensed users. So I'm assuming they were recommending that there's like an actual vetting, a proper vetting process even for unlicensed users prior to.
Which again, with the you just need to be able to book minimum whatever duration in advance, so those checks can be taken.
I don't know what that would be, but obviously more involved than what it currently is. So due to this recommendation, which this particular coroner agreed with, and the extensive work that had been undertaken in response to that recommendation, the coroner in this inquest declined to make a recommendation with respect to P650 forms and registry oversight. And the coroner also mentioned that the P650 forms had since been updated, but not repealed as recommended in the other inquest since GH's death. So I do have the questions that you get asked on the P650 forms if people are interested.
Yeah.
And this is obviously specifically New South Wales.
Yeah.
So the questions, and these are those prescribed questions that if you answer yes to any of these questions, you're denied use of a firearm. So have you in New South Wales or elsewhere, A, been refused or prohibited from holding a firearms license or permit, or had a firearms license or permit suspended, cancelled or revoked?
I mean, yeah, clearly you're not going to answer yes to that. Obviously.
B,
so just, at what point do you be like, we don't need to ask this anymore?
You have to.
Yeah, you have to.
You can't not ask this question when someone's trying to access a firearm.
Yep.
Yeah, fair.
I know, it sounds dumb.
So stupid. Yeah, go on.
Because people are going to lie.
Yeah.
But at least if you haven't got the proof that you've asked the question.
You can prove that they've lied.
Correct.
But if you have 100% of no's for 20 years, what's the point of asking it anymore?
But I don't know if they have 100% of no's.
Yeah.
Some people are honest.
Yeah.
What? Okay. At which point I'd be like, why have you shown up today? Anyway.
B, have you ever been the subject of a firearms prohibition order?
Okay.
C, within the last 10 years, been convicted of an offence involving firearms, weapons, prohibited drugs, robbery, violence, terrorism, or an offence of a sexual nature.
Interesting. Okay, sure.
D, within the last 10 years been the subject of a family law or domestic violence order or an apprehended violence order other than an order that has been revoked?
So if it's been revoked, it doesn't matter?
Sounds like it.
Okay.
Which is
fine.
E, ever attempted suicide or self-harm? Again, that's a very broad, even though we're saying like the question's specific, ever attempted suicide or even self-harm. Like what does that?
Yeah, does that mean
How many
when
teenagers?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you're now 60 years old.
Sorry. Teenagers aren't getting the gun license. How many people as teenagers?
Yes. No, I understand
have done that.
Yeah.
And then, it's potentially 40, 50 years later.
Yeah, and the question is very clear. Like, have you ever?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, the use of the word ever.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's not
currently.
Last 10 years.
But as we discussed before, it's not, do you have a mental health concern? It's have you ever tried to commit suicide?
So at least it's asking that question
'cause
directly.
When we were speculating before, like it's not about mental health. It's literally have you... Yeah, okay, cool.
So I'm assuming that was what was changed in these questions. Remember
this has changed. Right. Sorry, go on.
Yes, so they've actually now changed it to directly ask
that question. Okay.
So it's an improvement to what it was, but...
Good.
But also self-harm doesn't equal suicide.
True.
No, but it also says, have you ever attempted suicide or self-harm?
Yeah, I know, but why are they linking necessarily self-harm and suicide?
I know it's
because you can self-harm and not be suicidal.
But also, are you about to go on to say whether it asks, have you ever considered harming others, or is that just like not even in there?
Not even in there, but the mental health thing is in there.
Have you ever been homicidal?
Yes.
Like just to me, and like don't get me wrong, we joke about feeling a little homicidal when we're angry with someone or something like. But I mean, like, have you genuinely had a mental health disorder involving homicidal thoughts? It's kind of where it's a disorder rather than just brief rage.
Yeah, and it's interesting because then the next question, F, is couched by a time frame. It says, in the past 12 months, have been treated or referred for treatment for alcoholism, drug dependence, or a mental illness within the meaning of the Mental Health Act 2007, or as a mentally disordered person within the meaning of that act.
Oh, yeah, because I read that act all the time and have an idea
of
the exact definition
You're
is.
like,
what layperson just like knows what the definition of the mental health disorder is via the act?
I think they don't. Is the answer to that question. Generally, unless they've been specifically told that by their mental health provider. But I also think they can't just say mentally disordered.
True.
Because
they have to provide
what does
a
that
definition.
mean?
Yeah.
You have to define it in some way. Yeah. Well, it's within the regulation of that act. And if you then go look it up, you'd be able to say, yes, this particular thing that I suffer from is a mental disorder.
Yeah, maybe the shooting clubs have that act just printed out for you.
That relevant section of like
they probably would. Or have it at least accessible somewhere.
Yeah, you would hope.
G, currently subject to a good behaviour bond.
Sure.
H, currently subject to an interim apprehended violence order.
Oh, the good behaviour bond, like you're looking a bit questionable about that. It's probably the people that, because technically they then wouldn't have to say that they've been convicted of anything or whatever, because they're the people that are, it's not put on your record as long as you act by good behaviour, and then if you don't, then it'll become a record.
Right. That's probably a part of the good behaviour bond is not accessing firearms, potentially, depending on what.
I suppose it's not. Depend. Yeah, it depends on your criminal act.
Yeah.
Or your not recorded criminal act.
Yes. If you've attempted to rob a store with a gun, then maybe they're like, probably shouldn't access firearms. Again, I don't know if you'd be on a good behaviour. I don't know.
But if you just really like to defraud the government, like maybe you can still shoot a gun.
Maybe.
Who knows?
So the final question is, are you currently suffering from any mental illness or other disorder that may prevent you from using a firearm safely?
Yeah, okay.
That's
who's
so subjective.
But also, who's answering yes to that? Yeah, okay, cool.
Yeah, I'm
especially if you're there,
so I can't use a firearm.
Well, because I mean, the honest answer for GH was yes.
For a lot of those questions, the answer was yes.
Yeah, well, but like that one specifically.
Also, subjective to safety, like because I mean, he wanted to end his own life, so I mean,
that's safe for everyone else.
Safely did it, didn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, but not for everyone else. You have to
witness it. You know.
Well, it's
again
physically safe.
Not condoning his actions or advocating for it. It's all subjective to the state of mind that GH was in at the time,
because you are answering the questions on behalf of yourself.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think this is pretty obvious, but the coroner noted that if GH had answered these questions correctly, his risk of harm would have been flagged.
Yes.
Yes, but I think that's making the point that this questionnaire is essentially pointless.
It is, but again, the question has to be asked. Like, can you imagine?
Yeah,
like,
you can't just say,
walking
whoever.
into a gun club and not being asked those questions.
Well, but again, because it should be a background check that's objective rather than
but they
you
can't
subjectively
do that
reporting.
because that background information
isn't available to
is
them.
confidential.
Oh. Yes, okay, fine.
So what other systems are there in place, Georgina?
I don't know. If you had a criminal history, how often are you just going around being like, I have a criminal history, you know? Like, I assume most people are not, like, disclosing that up front.
You'd think it would make sense to do it in a case where you know it's going to be checked.
Yeah.
So say employment.
Yes.
You know they're going to do a criminal history check, so you may as well say yes to start with.
Yes.
But you're right. It's not going to be checked in this circumstance, except if you then go shoot up somewhere and then they find out that you've
got a
retrospectively that you've answered this form incorrectly.
But what's that going to change at that point?
It's not going to change anything. It's just going to give you potentially... It's another aggravating factor.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. It's a retrospective thing, not a proactive.
Such a pointless form.
It is, but again, you have to ask questions.
I know.
And you never know. There could be a few people who go in there and they're like, oh, actually...
Well, I would like to see an audit of how many people have they actually declined.
It would be interesting. And I assume they have from the list and things that they have kept.
I wonder if there's an element of you go there with a group of friends.
And then all of a sudden that criminal history better...
Well, no, I mean, it's not a
domestic violence order.
It's not a private form. So, like, your friend sitting next to you filling out their own form might look over and be like, oh, why'd you answer no to that question?
I didn't know you were suicidal.
Oh.
No. It's more like I know you asked it was like,
true.
You know.
Didn't you get charged for terrorism that time? You probably should say yes.
Yes.
That question. Sorry. You did rob that bank with
that one
gun.
time. Do you not remember?
Yeah, exactly.
True.
So there may be an element where like someone's you're
lying,
with
or
calls you out on it, and that's how you end up being denied.
Or maybe, like, as dumb as it sounds, you could potentially go into and, you know, want to play with guns at the shooting range and not have thought about some of your history when you're going in there, and then it's actually put in front of you and you're like, oh, shit.
And don't get me wrong, sometimes people read these questions and don't interpret them correctly.
So the coroner went on to say that registry oversight of access to firearms by unlicensed shooters at clubs and verification of information provided by those unlicensed persons seeking to access firearms at shooting clubs goes to address the reduction of risk in harm. I think that's pretty obvious.
There are a lot of bits of coroner's inquest that are just a bit obvious, but but they still got to state it, right? Like, again, same thing with they have to do the questionnaire. The coroner just has to be like, yes, this is obvious, but you need to know.
If there's a way to verify their answers to those questions, then that would be helpful.
That would be ideal.
Yeah, exactly. Because people can lie and they do lie. And most of the time you would think in this circumstance it's not going to be an issue. Like if they're lying on the forms, like they're not going to do anything with the weapons that is going to compromise safety. It's just those circumstances where it does.
Yeah.
So finally, the coroner looked into the adequacy of the changes made at the shooting range following GH's death. So as mentioned, the shooting range was required to install a tethering system for trying shooting sessions. The club underwent a lot of effort to design and install this system. It was agreed that this was a significant improvement and was relatively inexpensive and does not drastically alter the experience for the shooter. Since the installation of this system, and at the time of this inquest, it had been installed at 3 other shooting clubs where patrons of those clubs had also used firearms at the clubs to self-harm. So again, showing it's not uncommon, or at that time, was not an uncommon
That's so
occurrence.
upsetting.
All the stakeholders who gave submissions in this inquest said that they would support a recommendation that the tethering system be installed at all shooting clubs across New South Wales. It was also agreed that the system significantly improves safety at the ranges and has virtually eliminated the ability for patrons to use the firearms to hurt themselves or others.
That's good.
Yeah. Okay. So it's almost a better system
than the questionnaire.
Than the questionnaire system.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
Mm. However, it was noted by all stakeholders that an exemption to the use of the tethering system should be made for patrons who have completed training conducted by the approved club, which was the practice that this particular shooting club had used at the time of the inquest. So they're basically saying if you've gone through extensive vetting, then you should be able to use the untethered pistols.
Yeah, so it's just for those first time early
users or unlicensed users.
Yeah.
You can't just walk into a club
and be handed a gun.
A gun. Like, you'd be handed a tethered gun that you can't.
That seems fair. Again,
I think
it's still a sport.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, it does really seem like a better safety mechanism.
Yeah.
Than the vetting system. But obviously this vetting system is also being considered in conjunction with the actual application for licenses as well.
True.
Rather than just the application for unlicensed users to go to a shooting club. So instead of making recommendations in this inquest, the coroner made proposed recommendations. As annoying, but
what's the difference?
I mean, they're not even mandatory anyway.
I know,
Exactly.
so it's kind of like exactly the same. But at the time of this inquest, there was a review underway of the Firearms Registry in New South Wales. And the purpose of that review was to ensure that the processes around the licensing of firearms were robust, timely, and effective. And the review was going to consider the recommendations of the Edwards inquest and hopefully this inquest as well. So they're like, instead of saying dumb, it really doesn't make a lot of sense. Okay. It should have just been a recommendation.
Sure.
That could have been considered. And I did have a look for any outcomes of this review and couldn't find anything.
So is it still ongoing or it's happened?
No, it said it was sort of underway in 2022-23, so it should have been concluded by now. But didn't see anything. And I didn't dig too deep into the different forms and stuff.
Yeah, fair.
So the proposed recommendation 1A is that the Commissioner of Police give consideration to developing and maintaining at the Firearms Registry an alert system linking pieces of intelligence received by shooting clubs. And 1B, that the Commissioner of Police, in consideration of whether an alert system be developed and maintained, also consider whether amendments to Clause 101 and 104 of the Firearms Regulation may be required. That's our confidentiality clauses, particularly in relation to unlicensed persons who are not club members or proposed club members who are applying to use club firearms for try shooting courses. So basically they're saying it'd be great to have this alert system. There's obviously confidentiality issues that may occur. So you might have to consider changing those clauses to get around those confidentiality issues.
But probably worth it.
Yeah. But again, it's just a proposed recommendation, so do what you will with it.
Do as you please.
And then the second recommendation was that the Commissioner of Police give consideration to imposing the following condition on all approved shooting ranges that permit unlicensed persons to handle or use firearms pursuant to Section 6B of the Firearms Act. A. Unlicensed possession and use of pistols pursuant to Section 6B of the Firearms Act and Clause 129 of the Firearms Regulation is not permitted at the shooting range unless the pistol is securely tethered in such a manner that it prevents the pistol from being turned to the rear or any direction other than towards the designated target. And B, compliance with condition A may be dispensed with in circumstances where the range official is satisfied that the person is a member of an approved pistol club and has successfully completed an approved firearms safety training course by the approved club. And then the coroner finally said that given the recommendation 20 of the Edwards inquest, no further recommendation is made in relation to the P650 forms.
Yeah, it's already been updated. Yeah.
Correct.
But it wasn't entirely within what
the recommendation was, but it was at least an improvement to the former form of the form.
And that whatever number it was,
650.
Was that updated just for the come and try, or was that also updated for the registry?
It's for everything.
Yeah,
so
okay, cool.
It's for the registry as well, because I understand that with the Edwards inquest, the individual there, I think, may have gone to shooting ranges as an unlicensed person, but they ultimately got their license right before they committed the offence. So that was obviously in relation to the P650 form as it applied to people who were applying for firearms licenses, but it's the same form that's used across the board.
Right. So presumably the DVO stuff was new addition to that based on that.
I'm not sure because I haven't looked into it. And I don't know the distinction between Domestic violence order or an apprehended violence order?
I think it's just like whether you're living together or not, right? So as in like stalking would be an apprehended violence order, not a domestic violence order.
Yeah. So it might have been that they added one or the other into that question following that inquest. But yeah, it's obviously been changed. And also that part about self-harm and suicide. That's everything for this episode. It's an interesting case. Hopefully it's not too controversial because obviously it's a controversial topic.
For like multiple reasons, right? Like firearms, suicide, accessibility, etc.
But I think it's a very interesting one. And it's interesting also in that the solution, though there's never going to be 100% solution, but the solution to the issue seems to be quite simplistic in that this tethering system.
True, and it was not my first thought either.
No.
Again, not that I claim to have the solution to every inquest we go through, but like often sometimes it's like really obvious. It's like, yeah, that would have prevented that or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, my obvious thought was, well, just don't let them anywhere near the gun. But
that's
actually,
hard.
But actually that's not really possible. So therefore, okay, we need to risk mitigate if they're allowed near the gun.
And so let's put like physical barriers in place. And it seems to be a relatively simplistic, inexpensive thing to implement. And I haven't looked at this, but I wonder if it's been implemented in shooting ranges cross-jurisdictionally as well.
Yeah, I hope that it would have been. Again, if it's not super cost prohibitive and stuff. I would assume if I'm an owner of a gun range that like that actually would be a really great idea because
absolutely,
it's
because
just like
the risk mitigation,
but also
like just even like the potential trauma to your staff.
But also like, I mean, staff employment as well. Like if you can say this is a much safer way, you're going to keep your staff on board.
Yeah.
Risk of theft. Not that I think that people are walking into shooting ranges and stealing firearms, but like if it's tethered to something, there'd be no risk or lower risk. Yeah, I think there'd be a number of benefits for the owner anyway.
Yeah, and I also think reading this report as well, I wasn't aware of how big of an issue this was.
Yeah.
As well. Like it's obviously something that
happens.
Commonly occurred.
Again,
I haven't looked post, the update of...
You said that happened in 2017. Like,
correct.
That's not that long ago.
But again, it's probably because people, like, they don't report on it because they don't want to give people ideas.
Yeah, true. But we look at inquest findings. And again, like for none of us to have come across an inquest finding before.
It probably because also comes like with the tag suicide and we
true.
generally
skip over them.
Skip that. But yeah, as soon as I saw like tethering system sort of thing, I was like, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
But anyway, thanks everyone for listening. Hope you learnt something from this case and we will catch you next time.
Bye.
Bye.